Today's lesson was about solving matrix equations, but in order to do that, you have to be able to find the inverse. So very quickly, let's remind ourselves how to find the inverse of a matrix. So let's look at number 1. We have a 2 by 2. To find the inverse, remember you're going to put 1 over your determinant. So the determinant is when you take and multiply the first diagonal, 3 times 4 is 12, minus multiply your second diagonal, 7 times 1 is 7. So we end up with 1/5 as our scalar that we're going to multiply. Now to get your new matrix, take that first diagonal there, which is 3 and 4, and swap them. Take your second diagonal, 1 and 7, and negate them. When you negate something, you change its sign. Okay? So swap, negate. After you've done that, what you want to do is you want to use 1/5 as a scalar. So you'll multiply 1/5 to 4. You'll multiply 1/5 to -1. You'll multiply 1/5 to -7. And you'll multiply 1/5 to 3. And this is your inverse matrix. Now remember, the purpose of an inverse matrix is to get or to undo or find the inverse of a matrix that you have. And we use that to actually solve matrix equations when we have multiplication. Now with addition and subtraction, you can just simply add or subtract them. Do the inverse operations like we always do. But with multiplication, you have to use an inverse matrix to make it go away. Now I'll let you do number 2, but number 3, this is actually our first inverse matrix equation. So what we're going to do in order to solve it is we're going to have to find the inverse of our first matrix. Now looking at this, if I were to multiply row 1 to column 1, I would have 4 times x plus 1 times y. Where have we seen something like that before? And it equals 9. Now if I do row 2, column 1, I'll have 5 times x plus 2 times y, and it equals 6. So what this matrix equation is representing is a system of equation. Okay, now we know how to solve a system of equations using graphing, substitution, and elimination. So this is going to be the 4th method in our arsenal to actually solve a system. So to do it, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the matrix that is multiplied to x and y, our unknown, and we're going to find the inverse of it. So 4, 1, 5, and 2. Now let's take 1 and put it over a number. Multiply your first diagonal. 4 times 2 is 8. And then loop around, and 5 times 1 is 5. So we end up with 1/3 as our scalar. Now in order to get our new matrix over here, take the main diagonal 4 and 2 and swap them. Take the other diagonal, leave them in their current position, but negate them or change the sign. And now we'll simply distribute. 1/3 times 2 is 2/3. 1/3 times -1 is -1/3. 1/3 times -5 is -5/3. 1/3 times 4 is 4/3. So this is my inverse matrix. Now remember, what an inverse matrix does is it actually gets rid of the matrix that you have in your equation. It changes it to an identity matrix. So since it does that, we're going to go ahead and skip through that step and know that we're going to multiply the identity matrix times the original matrix. And once we do that, we'll have an identity matrix. Okay, so if you have the identity matrix and you multiply it to x and y, 1 times x is x, and 0 times y is 0y. Okay, and right here, 0 times x is 0x, and then 1 times y is y. So when you multiply your identity matrix times the x and y that you have over here on the left, the only thing that you have left is x and y. Now let's look over here on the right side. If you are multiplying by an inverse matrix, you need to make sure that you write it down first. So write down your 2/3, -1/3, -5/3, and 4/3. That's your inverse. And then multiply it times the 9 and the 6 that you have on the other side. Do not put this on the right side of the 9 and 6 like you're accustomed to doing when you solve any type of equation. Make sure you put it first. So we're going to multiply the rows times the columns. So we'll have 2/3 times 9 plus -1/3 times 6. Now if I do row 2, column 1, I'll have -5/3 times 9 plus 4/3 times 6. Now let's do the math. We have 2/3 times 9. 3 will go into 9 3 times. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 will go into 6 2 times. 2 times -1 is -2. Down here, 3 will go into 9 3 times. 3 times -5 is -15. 3 will go into 6 2 times. 2 times 4 is 8. So this is what we end up with. Okay, so what that's telling me is x is equal to 4 and y is equal to -7. And that is the solution to the system of equations.